3, 2, 1. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the Build It podcast. It's been a while. Today's episode is a bit self-indulgent as we focus on DKCU ourselves, looking back at an eventful 2024 and taking a peek at what's in store for 2025. You already know my co-host. He needs no introduction. John Hall, DKCU president, co-founder, and our fearless leader. Hi, John.
Hello, Nick. Thanks for having me back for the.
It's absolutely. I couldn't really not have you back, John, because I can't be fucked doing this on my own, and it would just be me asking questions of my dog, which. Oh,
good point.
Anyway, so go on.
No, you make a good point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll carry on with the introduction now. So yeah, John, as I said, John's here to dig into last season, look at what's ahead for the club in 2025, and talk a little bit of league stuff as well. We're recording this on the day when the Midwest Prem are announcing 3 new expansion clubs, I believe, none of whom are of any interest to us because we did not get relegated last year. Hi, Steel City. But welcome to the Midwest Prem to our good friends out in Omaha, in Grand Rapids, and wherever the third one is that I haven't seen yet. Do you know where it is, John? You don't have to.
Yeah, but I'm not telling you.
No, okay. It'll be public knowledge by the time I get around to editing this shit, but wherever it is, hi. We've got a plan of questions, but I don't really know that if we're going to touch them all. But to start things rolling, John, here we go. I'm in the wrong page, balls. There we go. John, now that the 2024 season is behind us, how would you summarise the overall performance of the men's and the women's teams? Well, your best bits and your lowlights.
Yeah, on the field, I think I'll start with the women. They won the league, the IWSL league that we competed in. They won that for the second time. And they also were the Illinois State Cup champions for the second time in our 4 years with a women's program. You can't do much better than that. Extremely pleased. It'll haunt me forever that we were not able to advance to the finals of the USASA National Amateur Cup that we were able to host, and got knocked out in the regional semifinals of that competition. So that will haunt me, but 2 trophies, a lot of great memories, really pleased. On the men's side, I don't think we knew what we were getting into with 2 tiers in the Heartland Conference in the Midwest Premier League. Certainly a scrap there. I mean, into the final couple weeks of the season to find out if we could stay up or if we would be making history as the first club relegated. Fortunately, we did not. We were able to stay up in the top tier. And I actually, in all, we finished 4th in the conference, which is our best ever finish technically. So if you kind of combine both tiers. So, honestly, it was a historic season for the women and for the men, and lots to look forward to.
Yeah, it was pretty, I think we all went into it a little bit trepidatious of what, certainly on the men's side, could befall us, given some of the power hitters in there. So kudos to PJ and all his staff and the players for getting us through. And, commiserations to Steel City. He sent through good teeth. Just on the women's, what does growth look like for the women's team? Is this as big as we can get with the ladies, given the catchment area and the quote investment, basically, of people's time, or are there places we can go to look like to win the title and to win the state cup? Is that continuable?
Yeah. So, as a matter of fact, in a little bit of due diligence, each of the last couple of seasons, we've looked into. Do we need to take the women's program to a different league, sort of mirroring the men in a regional or national type of a competition? Do we need to expand? Certainly from an equality standpoint, the club has no issue doing that. So I did speak with Dan Carl, our women's coach and women's director of soccer now. I had a long chat with Dan just a month or so ago. We pursued a couple different options and looked at the X's and O's and the real, what is the cost? What is the travel? What is the schedule? All the things to see if a bigger league or a different league, I should say, is a good fit. After evaluating 3 different options, none of them really struck Dan as something that our players and our roster or something that we needed to do at this time. Again, a lot of the things that we decide in the boardroom or in the front office kind of is what's our mission? Is to unite the community through soccer. We can do that in a rec league. We can do that in a regional league. Doing the thing that's maybe the sexiest doesn't necessarily make us sustainable. So we evaluated it. I told them, I said, if you want to do it, we'll figure out the finances and make it happen. And Dan didn't feel it was the right time or the right situation for us. So I think we're going to stay where we are, at least for 25. Obviously, still want to pursue the now that the Women's Amateur Cup is a thing, there's a third competition. And let's go get a damn treble and then evaluate it again next offseason.
All right, I'm with you. I'm here for the journey. And on the men's side, the relegation, that was the first, obviously everyone listening knows it was the first time that we'd had relegation in the league. How did it impact your thinking going into 2024 and Coach PJ's? And then is it going to change going forward, the strategy for recruitment going forward?
I don't think, obviously the goal was top 3 finish was PJ's goal. He told me, he said, I'm not happy staying up. I'm happy in the top 3 with Babs and Adria and House and Charney coming off of a league championship year the year before. There was a lot of reasons.
So he failed, is what you're saying. He
didn't meet his own expectations, but that's the kind of guy he is, and that's why he's a part of our club. From his standpoint, it was about recruiting again the right people that would show up with commitment, show up to training. If you don't kind of fit into the culture, you don't stick around here. I don't know. So I think it was good. I don't deal with much of the recruiting. I don't talk to the players a ton. That was all strategy that we trust our soccer people to deal with, and for good reason, because that's their job within the club. So I know certainly it was exciting for me to see we were in a battle, right? It wasn't like in years past where, all right, we're either going to finish 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th, and there's no jeopardy at all. I think having that safety net removed where it was like, oh crap, we got to compete and these games matter and there's only 10 of them. That's a substantial risk every Saturday night or whatever to go out there and the players have to compete at a level that justifies staying up. And I would have accepted relegation as much as we pick on Steel City. They accepted it with dignity and said, hey, kind of ball don't lie. It is what it is. Let's make the most of it. And now we're coming back up. Watch out. And that's how we would have approached it. But there's a lot of teams in the 2 conference or the 2 tiers still in play in those final weeks to see who would be promoted and who would be relegated. I thought it was, for those of us following, is awesome drama. Yeah,
it was great. It came down to the last game between, and it was just, it was a shame they couldn't stream it, but different conversations in different time. You said that you don't really have much dealings with the recruitment, but I know you are hands-on with the players in terms of just you're a big presence. Did you get any feedback from the players as to whether or not there was it brought extra frisson to the season?
Not formally, but I know again, anytime you're getting down to the wire in the final weeks of the season and there's meaningful things to play for, I know that kept the spirit up. In talking with PJ and the coaching staff, it was there were still guys coming out battling at the end that in years past might have been like, hey, I'm going to take a couple weeks off before I head back to school or whatever. And there was guys that showed some fortitude to battle through there right up to the end and make sure that we got in. And then obviously to cap off with the home finale and get a win against Steel City, who we'd never beaten in the league, was just added a little cherry on top to avoiding relegation, and they took care of business, and it was all in all, it was a great season.
Yeah, agreed. Kudos to the board of the league for sorting all that out, and thank God we benefited this time around. If and when the devil falls on us, I won't be necessarily as enthusiastic, but hooray for now. All right, off the pitch, we pride ourselves in being a community club. We believe we won a community award in the AGM a couple of years back. Kudos to Lansing for stealing that from us, but we'll get it back. How did the fans, or how do you feel the fans contributed to success for both teams?
Well, I would argue, I think we obviously could always have more numbers of fans at games, but I would still put our overall match day experience from a fan perspective and maybe a player perspective, but I would match us with pretty much any team in the Midwest Premier League. A lot of clubs do it very similarly, and I put a, I think we're top tier in that regard. I think there's a lot that can still be done with our fans to educate them, right? I don't think they show up knowing who we're playing or knowing the backstory of, oh, this is Steel City, we've never beaten them, and having that pride in what we're doing, or we're playing Chicago House and their brief but rich history actually at this level. Audria, Babs, I mean, there's stories to tell. Obviously I have to help you as the marketing guy. I got to help you tell those stories and find ways to do that. But I think there's a lot more that can be done. And I think it's, and I'm not complaining, it's fantastic, but I think we've only scratched the surface of what a match day looks like and how those fans ultimately impact the players and give them that awesome experience that they may not get it anywhere else they've ever been.
I agree. Yeah, and I hold my hands up. I've dropped the ball on several occasions in terms of marketing the story rather than the event, and it's a thing that I'm trying to upgrade for 2025 and forward. From the outside, as a out of towner, it does seem like there's a difference between the atmosphere or the event, in whatever you want to phrase it, from a men's game to a women's game. Are you conscious of that? And how, if so, how do we need to rectify it? And if so, how?
Great question. Yes, there's a difference, not intentionally or not entirely intentionally. When we look at things, and Faye is our match day director, I should say. She took over last year and kind of running the day-to-day of match day experience for both men's and women's. And we had a lot of games in about 9 weeks. When we play our women's league games on Tuesday nights, again, that works great for the players. In talking with Dan, does it work great for summer crowds? Not as much as a Saturday night, but I also think there's a way, again, in the same tradition, I always look back to you, right? 3 o'clock on Saturdays is it's why we go to soccer, we watch football. I think we have an opportunity to, because the women have been so successful, I think we could make Tuesday night soccer night in DeKalb County in the summertime. And just like Thursday nights, they do music in the park and all these things. We can make Tuesday night a thing. Do we spend as much money on match day? I'll call it entertainment, right? Bounce houses and face painters. No, but attendances don't dictate that. You don't want to be foolish with our money, right? We only have so much set aside for that kind of stuff at each game. So, and we did try, scheduling is a whole nother thing. I learned a lot this year, but when we did have women's games, we did them bigger. We did them on the weekends, I should say. We did them bigger, and we tried to match intensity. We tried to do all the things. So I think it's a little bit of that. Not that we don't want to do it, but it's sort of like it all has to justify itself as we plan for some of this stuff. And I'm going to lean hard on Faye this year to come up with ways to make it different but equal, and still be able to give fans that Tuesday night energy.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly on the scheduling and the marketing and the whole thing. Like, it is hard from a marketing perspective. It's hard to differentiate, and there's an argument that says you shouldn't have to differentiate, but the market also says that you kind of do. And it does feel like as soon as you do differentiate, that you are belittling the ladies' game or unnecessarily bigging up the men's game. I think, to your point, Saturday night just resonates more of a event than a Tuesday night, right? It's after work. It's like, oh, I can't even be bothered. I just want to go home and eat tacos. So yes, we are hamstrung by the length of the season and the commitments of our players and everything else, and the commitment of other clubs as well. From a scheduling point of view. So it isn't just a case of what we would want to do, but we can always do better. I agree. All right. That's enough looking backwards. Looking forwards, 2025. What are the goals? What are the hopes? What are the intentions for the club as a whole, and then for the two sides?
I think for the club, this is an opportunity, as I've reflected over the last 60 or 90 days postseason. The best way I think I've explained it to you is I feel like we maybe plateaued a little bit. I didn't think we saw the kind of the rise in attendance and memberships and all the stuff. I do think scheduling, which was me this year, we had some just with some NIU conflicts and some different things at the facility. We struggled to get those Saturday night games. We had a few. Weather, we had a kind of a crummy year again with weather forecasts where it was 80% chance of rain, nothing you can do about it. But by the time it clears up, people are already decided to do something else. And I think weather plays a bigger factor into it than, and obviously being an uncontrollable, that's tricky. But so this year, looking forward, I want to try to schedule things as consistently. I think some of the feedback we got from fans was be consistent, right? If we're going to kick off at 5:00 on Saturdays, it's always 5. And if it's going to be 7:00 on Tuesdays, it's always 7. Not having a 7:30 or a 3:30 or a 7:30, like really getting consistent with time so the fans can start to understand that. That's one thing I think we can control, that we can help. We can't do anything about some of the other things that they asked us about. But really just sort of a renewed commitment to making the fan experience as memorable as it can be. I think having our staff better organized, I think having some fresh faces in the boardroom with the board of directors level to engage other groups and other things. I'm really looking at this as the start of DKCU 2.0. I don't know ultimately what that looks like yet, but I'm excited to get in the meeting rooms with our board and with our staff and have conversations about, a 5 and 10 and 20-year plan and start moving past, let's just be sustainable. And now let's go kick ass. And that's really what I want to see us start to lay out the path of what that looks like and then start walking down it.
Yeah. I think from the outside, like for the men's, that target is fairly consistent, right? Those 3 clubs that you mentioned, the Bavs, Adria, House, if we can become the 4th of that, that's progress on the pitch, right? The ladies, as we mentioned, right, they've achieved not as much as they can do, but they continue to achieve within their pool. And so that ties into like what we can do with the fans and the community. If we can get the base bigger, the ladies can go somewhere. But until the base is bigger, until we can guarantee 500 people, until we can guarantee sponsorship of travel, until we can guarantee that players are going to commit to traveling 4, 5, 6 hours for something that they're not necessarily going to win, then it all links into everything else. But for the men's side, it's on the playing side, it's a fairly easy target, right? So on the playing side, the aspect of the club that we haven't really spoken about is the academy. Mm-hmm. What role do we see them playing, not necessarily even in 2025, but in 2030 in terms of the pipeline? And are we starting to see the fruits of Dan and Mike's travails, or are we still a ways off yet?
I think anytime we have, I'll call them club soccer players, right? You can play recreationally, you can play club, play for your high school, whatever. We've seen some of our younger high school seniors, get into the reserve team and things like that. All of that takes time. And I know from my experience with the academy as a parent and as a coach, like there's some really exciting groups of young boys and girls that are like all in on it, can't get enough soccer, right? And I think that's exciting, the passion that some of these kids have, that they will practice every day. They're out in their backyard, they're doing all those things. And I think those are the ones that ultimately will, if they don't burn out, which is nobody wants to talk about it, but if we don't burn the kids out, those are the kids that are going to grow up and want to play for our men's and women's teams and play in college and maybe beyond. Really, that's the role that I think we play is working with the academy to inspire the kids. So it's a joy to wake up and go to training every day because they're aiming for something bigger and they just kind of fall in love with the sport. And that's a generational thing, right? That's the 8-year-olds now getting to 18. The academy's been around 2.5 years. So there's lots of work to do there. But I think with time and with growth and with us doing the right things and the academy doing the right things, The brand growing, the organizational awareness that DKCU is a thing and it's not a profit center. It is a community resource, as you say. Like people like that. Like they like our story. So I think the more we can continue to tell that and people get to know us, the ability to use the academy as a base and a foundation on and off the field is going to be huge for us.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've started to see a couple drip feed into the ladies side of things, right? But making the dent in the men's side is trickier. But the sheer weight of population within DeKalb means that at some point it will come. There will be a tipping point. We just have to keep that pipeline open. Let's talk about you, John. You and your beautiful face. It says here on my copious notes, reflecting on your journey with DKCU so far, what lessons have you learned? But realistically, I guess my question is more just like, we always ask podcasts, or we try to, like, what would you do differently? And I get my question to you is, what wouldn't you do differently since you started? What are you super duper proud of having, in the 8 years we've been going?
Well, my biggest success here is that we're still here. I don't think any of us, and probably you too, when we first met, and I said, yeah, we're going to start this club, and you were like, well more versed in lower league soccer, maybe not in the States, but in general, this is a cultural thing that you've grown up with. I think you probably yourself would admit that, oh, here's another guy thinking he can do something, right? And I think that the ability to grow, the thing I'm most proud of in that sustainability and still being here is, and I truly believe this, like we have a group of volunteers that for whatever reason, I think they've fallen in love with the club and the group of us like we look out for each other. We've created a soccer church where people come and pray on Saturday nights at NIU. Like the staff is fantastic. Everybody will do anything they're asked. We've really grown a really cool thing, and we happen to do some soccer stuff too. That's also been really cool. But I think we have, and you can speak to this. I think we have a culture that everybody does different things, but like people generally care. You could offer to pay people and they would probably say no thanks. And I think it's what the club's about. It's about other people, not ourselves. And that kind of echoes through our volunteer staff. I think the community embraces us because that is in our hearts, that is what we're about. And I don't think they haven't put the pressure on us yet. Like I would like to be, I've told you many times, I'd like to be sitting at a bar being scorned because we got relegated, or because why don't we sack the coach, or like I want them, the community, to care that much to hold us accountable. And I hope someday we get there and the next president can face those torches being thrown at him. But I think that all we've accomplished is pretty incredible to still be in the position we are in all ways after 7 or 8 years. It's just incredible.
Yeah. You see those clubs dying on the side of the road all the time, right? And the fact that we're not only here, but at worst plateauing is, a huge testament to everybody involved. I think, you like to be bashful about it, but a lot of it is you. Most of it is you. We know that. And in your quiet moments, you would probably admit that to yourself. But I agree, it shouldn't be you, but it still is. But the people like yourselves and some of our volunteer crew, and then the people at Lansing and the people at AFC with Columbia and whatever, they're House, and you can name them, whether in the Midwest or elsewhere in the country. Right? There are good people in charge at so many clubs that you almost want there to be a United States soccer club with all these people that could just get together, and then they would change the course of US soccer. But sadly, that's not the way. But that was a bit of a rant. So how are you gonna, from your perspective, how do you push the club into 2025, 2026, 2030? I mean, just to interrupt that question, we haven't even individually, not even on this podcast, but individually, we haven't even spoken about the potential for 2026 and the World Cup and everything else. But so this year's almost got to be a positioning year, right? Where we know we're in a place to. This probably isn't the format for this conversation. It should probably happen off air. But 2025 is got to be big. If we plateaued in 24, we've got to be better in 25. We've always got to be better. But 26 could be something incredible if we do it right.
So you're right, and I think there's a couple things. The World Cup is a thing. Have I thought about it? Yes. Have I asked ChatGPT how to engage with it and make it a thing? Yes. You know what they say? All of AI says throw a watch party. Okay, great. I could come up with that on my own. We've been doing that for 7 years. I think that one of the things that we will get stuck on worrying about the World Cup personally is the schedule congestion. It's already hard in the summer, and now they're going to have 48 teams and playing over like a 6-week period. I think that is going to that could be a terrible thing for lower league soccer. Okay, so yeah, I want to celebrate it. It's great. It may not be back to the U.S. in my lifetime again, right? I mean, it's whatever. So yes, well, let's enjoy it. However, there's going to be real challenges that come with it. I don't think because somebody watched Ecuador and England play at 4 a.m., or I guess it won't be because it'll be here, at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, they're not coming to a DKCU game on Saturday night because of that. We have to work through some of those things. I think here's the thing that excites me broader without the World Cup, right? I think it was pretty obvious. I'm curious your thoughts. The plateau is the right word, right? I thought it was tough. I thought this year was a grind. I thought it was very difficult hosting the Amateur Cup finals. At the end of the year, that was a big event. I'm very glad we did it, but that left us walking out the door exhausted instead of wanting more as a staff, or at least myself. Okay, so I'm not even saying I wouldn't do it again. Now I understand what the challenges of it are, though. So I think that's good. So we educated ourselves. So I think the biggest positive we have in all aspects of the club we run, in the community we run it in, is that to this day, I can walk down the street and ask 10 neighbors if they've heard of us, and I would maybe get 2. It's a little better now with the academy because there's a little more brand exposure and stuff. They might have seen the logo, but they have no idea what we are, why we are, how we are, where we are, any of that. So I still think we've only scratched the surface. I think there's so much more that can be done. And I think we're better positioned now with some staff structuring, some new board members. They're just fresh, right? So we kind of, not to say like out with the old, in with the new, but like we're refreshing a little bit, right? We're empowering people to do other things and extra things. And I think the awareness that it plateaued is something that probably a lot of organizations or clubs might not even recognize that they plateaued. And they might just go, oh yeah, well, it was still okay. And it was still a good year. It just, it didn't ascend.
I agree. But why do we feel like that? We said that the ladies achieved as much as they could. We said that the men had an all-time high finish. We said that our attendances were as good as anything within the league. So why do we both feel like it plateaued? What were we expecting?
Well, it didn't ascend. You know, attendances were great, but they weren't better than the year before, right? And you and I've talked, like we need 30% growth every year, 30%, 30%, 30%, 30%. And we didn't get that. And that's not your fault. That's not my fault. That's a collective, it's a collective thing from conflict, from scheduling congestion, from entertainment options, from bad weather to all of it. Maybe this year we get great weather all Saturday at 6 p.m. games and attendance doubles. Great. I think the awareness that there's a problem, and it's not even a problem, right? It's just like, if we want to get better every day and we didn't get better, let's figure out why we didn't get better. We don't have to get 30%. Can we get 5% better?
Yeah.
Sponsorships were fine. We didn't have as many groups out. We didn't have as many birthday parties. And I'm not pointing the finger in any way at anybody. I think it's just, we have to continue to reinvent ourselves in what we do at the games. And can we give them something, again, memorable that they go, man, I can't believe they did that at a game. I mean, you saw it. We met with Big Time from Windy City Pro Wrestling. What if we had a wrestling ring out at a game? And after the game, there was a wrestling, like pro wrestling. I don't know. I don't know if that can happen. We talked about it. I don't know if it can happen. But that's the kind of thing where you go like, how goofy can we be and make this a thing that people can't miss? Because no matter what, it's still soccer. It's still the 4th or 5th most popular sport in the U.S.
It goes back. All things lead back to Jesse Cole and Savannah Bananas, right? We're not trying to make it a sideshow. We're not trying to make it a freak show. And that's no shade on Jesse, right? Like he's absolutely nailed what he's trying to do. But for soccer at our level to survive, it's got to be more than 22 guys kicking a pig's bladder around. It's got to be, right? It's almost the soccer doesn't have to be an afterthought, but neither you and I are playing for very good reasons. Neither you and I are coaching for very good reasons. None of the volunteer staff is involved in any way at quote 3 o'clock on a Saturday. So why the hell can't we put as much of a metaphorical sweat on as those guys do, right? It's I get it. It just intrigues me as to why we both came out of it just like, oh, and yet by every metric apart from butts on seats, we met or exceeded. And we kind of met butts on seats, but we're both like, oh. And is that's got to be a good thing, but
no, it's good because we're holding ourselves to a high standard. But what did we do in 24 any different than we did in 23? Did we just run it back?
23 felt less chaotic purely from a marketing perspective, for sure. 23 was, in terms of the timings between the games, we didn't have the USSA thing to worry about, but realistically, there was a 3-week run up to that in terms of getting people agitated and it didn't impact marketing per se. I don't know. It just felt. I was away for 2 weeks. Maybe that was part of it from my perspective, but it just felt condensed and rushed. And if it felt like that to us, maybe it felt like that to the community. I don't know. But if we've got 10, 15 games in a 10-week period, which is what we have, 15, 20 tops, right, with men's, women's cup games, there's no reason we can't make them semi-spectacular. We just dropped the ball. No, we didn't even drop the ball. We didn't.
So here, I just pulled it up because I think it's interesting. Our teams, men, women, all competitions, we played a total of 31 games. 31 games. Now, we didn't market them all. They were not all at home, but we played, let's say, 15 games at home in a 9-week period.
Mm-hmm.
For our volunteers, which includes you and I, to attend most of them, that's exhausting. In a summertime, it's just so compact. And then for you, I always use you as an example with marketing. You got to tell everybody in the world for 3 days that Saturday's game is the biggest game that's ever happened in DeKalb County.
Yeah.
And on Saturday night, you post a result. And by Sunday morning, you are telling everybody that Tuesday's women's game is the biggest game that's ever happened in DeKalb County. Yeah. And then Wednesday, guess what? Thursday night, we have a state cup game. Tomorrow's game is the biggest game that's ever happened. And I think that just looking at it just from your role, right? One perspective in the club, it's overwhelming to think of because it's not just typing it out. That's easy, right? It's the content, the graphics, the logos, the BS that I send you with zero warning that you didn't know you were going to have to schedule. The camp you throw in, all the stuff. It is a ton to do it the way we do it. Now, could we scale back and say we're not going to do the men's reserve team? Yes, there's consequences to that. Could we scale back and say we're not going to do the state cups? It's just too much. Yes. there's potential consequences to that, right? We do the things we do for a number of reasons, and we do evaluate that. I did have a postseason meeting with the men's staff. I had a postseason meeting with the women's staff. Let's evaluate what works, what doesn't. I don't care if you throw it all out and say, I just want to play in a Sycamore Rec League. Let's have that conversation, right? So back to your point, I think that the overall stress of, I hate to say it, MLS term, schedule congestion, I think it led to some exhaustion from us. So it was almost like happy it's done instead of leave us wanting more on July 29th.
Yeah, I make you right. Because we've had end of seasons before, and I didn't feel as deflated after them as I did after this one. Weird, but yeah, I hadn't really thought about it in terms of what we achieved. I was only used to thought things about it in terms of how miserable I felt after it. But hey ho, look, we're going to wrap it up. So
it was, but Nick, it was a grind, and your grind doesn't start May 20th. Your grind starts now, because by the time this comes out, you'll probably have tryouts scheduled. You'll be posting about that. You'll be posting roster stuff as players sign. You'll be like, your job, and most of us, it's not a 3-month thing. So you do 9 months of stuff, and then you have a 3-month absolute freaking sprint where you're trying to meet everybody's demands, the league requirements, keep up with our staff, our own, like, make sure we're all good, make sure everybody's okay at home, you worry about the players, the coaches need stuff, dealing with the confirming thing. It's just so much administratively that I think this year it finally just caught up. Like, man, oh man, I need to give everybody some time off. And I gave you guys all the longest break in the history of DKCU. You're very welcome.
You're the leader we deserve, John. Let's put it that way. All right, let's wrap it up on a positive thing, because that took an unexpected negative turn. But what can fans, our rivals expect in 2025 on and off just off the pitch? We can't control on the pitch, right? Other than Ronan.
No, I think off the pitch, I think we're starting. We had our first meeting kind of as a staff just a week ago, I think it was. And I'm going to take a less of the burden about answering that question, and I'm going to throw it back at you and Faye and Ram and everybody, and say let's all decide what we're going to do to make sure that the plateau starts turning and going upward again. Because the sky's the limit to what we can do, but it takes more than you shouting about it on socials and me it takes a collective effort to put this thing into the motion we want to. So I'm gonna really put the burden on everybody to do more than we did in 24. Let's not do the same in 24 and expect different results. Whether it's one thing or 30 things, let's try something different.
All right, just to tie it up, what's one thing you're going to do different?
I just delegated a bunch of stuff. That's completely different. I never do that.
Yeah.
No, I'm focused more on. I'm really going to focus more on the outreach stuff. I've already been doing a lot of these, nonprofit meetups, working with the chamber, with our new board members. I want to make sure that I'm giving them the information, sort of the onboarding, so that they can go. One of them can go attend a thing and promote us and talk about us and do these things. I was in a school last week doing a thing with speaking to fifth graders about kind of the career and the history of DKCU and starting it from nothing. A number of those things. I've actually, we recently applied for a grant that we've never applied for a grant in the club history. We applied for a grant to help us donate some soccer equipment to local elementary schools and start some of that outreach. So I'm definitely trying to do some things, maybe not completely different, but sort of like extra large of what I was doing. By letting others take these other things, then it frees me up to go do what I'm perhaps best suited for, is just go talk to people.
Yeah. In a nutshell, that's more outward looking than inward looking, that feels like. So hooray for that. All right. This half-hour chat was not half-hour chat, but maybe we'll get it down to close to half hour. Thanks for your time, John. Thanks for everybody for listening. Thanks to Fanbase for partnering with us on this. We didn't mention Ali at all. Fanbase, our ticketing partner, our tech hub, happily stepped up and said they're going to partner with us for 2025, and as long as we've got the negatives of Ali. So we are going to shout about them. If you haven't checked them out, you should absolutely check them out. Proper podcasts, proper blogs have sponsorship spiels that they say. I don't. Just look at Fanbase. It's quite good. It does what we want it to do. There you go. But yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. We'll be back with another guest at some point, which won't be DKCU based. It'll be an actual practical one. I don't think we're taking a turn with this podcast, John, but we're doing it slightly differently going forward, right?
I just clicked the link when you told me to click a link, and then we talked for a little bit.
My rock. Okay. Well, then you'll see going forward if there's any noticeable change in direction. But for now, thank you for listening. God save the king.